Hi everyone, welcome to Reading the Game, where we don't just focus on the basic things football podcasts focus on, but also on tactics, mental health, business, and most prominently, intelligence while playing. I'm your host Ethan Reichert, and today I'm joined once again by Peter Reichert, who has 25 years of coaching experience and a UAFB license. Today we're just going to be talking about Man U, be more of a discussion than a point to prove.
Yeah, we had a fun weekend, didn't we?
Yeah, 5-0 loss to Liverpool.
That's right. I was cheering for more.
And how comes you went so sure to get fired?
I just want it to be very obvious, so obvious that you can't paper over the cracks anymore.
You don't think it's obvious enough already?
Well, they had the game with Atlanta the other day, and they come back. They're down 2-0. They played terrible. They get this emotional response, win the game 3-2. Ronaldo
Yeah, but
scored.
surely the guy in charge of his job is intelligent enough to know that this guy can't
I don't know.
coach.
I think maybe he thinks, oh, look, they responded and they played for him in the second half.
If you look at all the stats and everything, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what goes through their minds
Yeah, it's always
because
tough
they
for
don't
you
know the
people
game. Like they're not football guys. They're football guys.
playing. Yeah, that makes sense. Solskjaer's.
I mean, they're American football owners.
Oh yeah, you're
Yeah.
talking about the Glazers. Oh,
The Glazers- I mean, so how do they really? They don't really know. So I don't know who they listen to or don't listen to. So to me, it just has to be, glaringly obvious how far apart United are from, the teams that have real coaches.
What would you say is well, I think we both okay. So the problem is about this podcast is we talk about this pretty much all the time, and so sometimes we have things in our head that are kind of like pretty much like assumed. And so if we say something, and you're like, oh, well, how did you get to that? There's been years of this conversation going back and forth that have gone into our opinions here. Just for a little disclaimer, I think we pretty much both agree that the Man U's defense is horrendous.
Yeah, and I told you today, I think I spent an hour just for the fun of it going through the game as a coach would, and I made it to about 15 minutes in. And I just was almost laughing. I just can't imagine. I just wondered if they go through game tape or not at United. And we're talking about one of the biggest clubs in the world. And I just can't understand how they don't see the problem. I don't know if it's as obvious. It's so obvious to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's as obvious. Like we talk a lot about, if you're playing and you make a defensive mistake, that half the people don't even see that mistake.
Like crosses behind the back line or passes behind the back line. It's just, yeah.
A coach, they're not looking for those details, but because we've discussed them so much, we see those details. I don't know how many people see details, how poorly, Maguire, just his positioning always gets sucked out from the front post, or, he's reading cutbacks and he's taking a half step, like, oh, I'm gonna take care of that cutback, and then he's like in no man's land. He's not covering the cross across goal, and he's not going to get the cutback, and so he's never cutting out these balls that are these really dangerous balls. Lindelof letting these balls come across the goal, and it happens over and over again.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, because as a coach, what I do is I would evaluate how goals are scored, and if there's any kind of pattern at all, like
It needs to be fixed.
it has to be fixed in order of like what's causing the most goals working downwards.
Like for City, when they found out that they were conceding all these counterattack goals, and Guardiola started telling his team to commit fouls and
and you start with what will help you the most earliest, and then you kind of work even down away from that until you especially when you're there for 3 years. Like, this stuff should be sorted out. And to me, I read Jonathan Wilson, who's the good soccer writer in the UK, and he talked about, Greenwood goes and presses Van Dijk. But it's like he didn't really know if he should go press or not. But he decided to go, which causes chain reaction of events that leads to a goal. But the key point is that he clearly didn't look like he had a plan. He was not told or instructed what to do.
Didn't you find somewhere that if the opposing team just held the ball, that United would move around and open up the gaps for them?
Yeah, I saw somebody did an analysis on YouTube, and they were and it looked like if you just were patient enough, that they would kind of press like incorrectly as individuals and open up spaces for you in the midfield. All you had to do was just kind of be patient enough and hold the ball long enough in the back for the spaces to open up. And I just I truly cannot fathom how there's not a more coordinated, effort. It's very individualistic, even in the attack, like in attacking, like there's, and I've just heard the same things coming from the people that seem to know and talk things, like Rio Ferdinand always talks about where's the pattern of play. And I heard Neville saying he went back and watched the Leicester game on the tactical cam, like a big wide view, trying to understand the pressing or the defensive shape, and he just could not make sense of it. So if a person who knows or understands the game is trying to understand or make sense of the patterns of play defensively and offensively and can't see any pattern evolving or developing, then there is none.
Yeah, and this isn't a case like the pattern's so complex we don't understand. We all know that Solskjaer is not a tactician. He's a man manager. He's a motivator.
I don't know. Like, it's, he's, Sir Alex Ferguson, he would say, oh, we need pace and power. Let's go. And it's like, let people, just run. And no, that's not enough. Like, good teams now are more than the sum of their parts. And if you analyze Liverpool and you watch their front three actually prevent the back five from playing. They can prevent the defensive midfielder from receiving the ball. They close off, the fullbacks and the center backs. So it's actually 3 players that, by working as a coordinated unit, and Klopp said way back when they said, oh, you're going to have people running and pressing all over. That's not true, because his teams don't just race off and press. They're waiting for pressing cues. Which... Yeah,
Klopp's intelligence is something else to talk about.
The 2 teams couldn't be further apart.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see it, but what I don't understand is that this information is, like, widely available. Like, watch a YouTube video, go to a coaching course. Like, don't you think you'd be curious? Like, how's Liverpool doing that? Like... and there's many patterns. Like, there's different ways of trapping or pressing or having,
Tuchel's what he's doing with the 3-4-3.
Different. We watched Arsenal, Leeds press Arsenal a couple years ago, and everybody picked up man for man except for one player.
Bamford.
And I think it was Hernandez.
The winger would go in between the fullback and the center back.
One guy that's fast would play between 2. He'd shadow
Bamford.
He'd shadow cover. And so it was just, and they pick a weak player. They pick a weak center back. So they want the weak center back to always receive the ball and basically, shadow cover the fullback. And then that's, it's a set. And so if you have a player like Cristiano who's not going to press, you design your tactics.
Should be getting to Cristiano.
Yeah.
You want to?
Yeah, sure.
Just as a heads up, Cristiano is in the bottom 2% in the top 5 leagues for pressures. And so pressures per 90 minutes. Pressures per 90 minutes is basically, I think if you have to get like a meter or 2 meters, I'm not sure exactly how it's calculated. Basically, if you're putting pressure on the ball. How many times you do that per 90 minutes? Ronaldo's in the bottom 2% in the top 5 leagues. Like, talk about lazy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure everybody's seen it by now, that the video clip of Ronaldo, like, not pressing the ball and it's going out of bounds, and Cavani just sprints
from far side of the box across the field and keeps it in.
We originally had, I think, the third episode was going to be talking about Cavani and why we liked him so much. So, yeah, in our heads, Cavani's superior to Ronaldo, and while that might be very controversial,
it's probably really complicated. Some people
very
just not understand it. It might, even from a pure goal scoring perspective, I
100%.
feel that if he plays the same minutes as Ronaldo,
he would score more.
His goal scoring is going to be like in the same ballpark. You're not going to take a hit, but the amount of balls that he's going to win for you, and like in last year's Europa, final, I kind of lost count of how many times he came back and poked away a ball. Like, sprinted back and poked away a ball.
Just stopping counters.
And just winning possession back for his team. And so I think that work ethic is part of what exposed Martial.
Yeah.
Because Martial was the 9. And they were like, oh, this guy's the future.
He just jogged around.
And it wasn't until Cavani came and they realized, wait a second, like, why are we watching this guy lope around the field? Like, again, I don't understand how it took so long to realize that this guy's not energetic enough. And here's Cavani. I don't know how old he is.
34, I think.
Yeah,
roughly the same age as Ronaldo. Or younger.
And really, they talk about Ronaldo and his fitness regime and all this stuff. But I don't understand.
It's not important if you don't run. You can be the fittest guy in the world, but if you don't do the right movements, if you don't press, if you don't make movements off the ball to try to get the ball or create space, there's absolutely no point of
and you watch Firmino, closing down defense mid. Watch Salah. I mean, how hard he worked in that game, like so hard, up and down the flank, getting back, covering. And Cristiano stopped doing that like way back when we sold him the first time. I wanted him gone way back because he stopped wanting to work and he wouldn't go back up and down the flank, and Rooney was mad at him because Rooney had to go play left mid because Cristiano wouldn't track back. And so this is nothing new.
And you've seen like other teams have problems with that, like Barca and Valverde, like having to play 4-4-2 with Messi up top.
Messi and Suarez, you got like, Messi and Suarez.
We're not just like hitting Ronaldo and saying Messi's better. By no means. Messi's not better at all. He just walks around too. You can see the problems with PSG.
Yeah. No, I just, they've, that, I don't know if they got kind of cornered into that Ronaldo signing, but they've really set themselves further back. I felt Solskjaer had kind of laid down the law with Pogba last year, put him on the bench. Basically, like, you're going to, I need players to work. But now he's got the laziest player, that demands to play all the time. And, how do you play modern football with a player like that up front?
You need to have a really big character if you want to, keep Ronaldo on the bench. And Juventus eventually did that. And I believe Chiellini or Bonucci, one of them said and mentioned that we wish Ronaldo left earlier. Yeah. And just the impact, the negative impact he can have on teams. And so, I mean, eventually he was on the bench. But you have to have a really big character to do that. It's kind of hard to sign Ronaldo and say, hey, sorry.
And Solskjaer, who's this nice guy, and he, it's a major problem, and it'll be a problem for the next coach who comes in if indeed we're watching the news today to see if he's going to make it through the day.
We don't know if Solskjaer is going to be fired yet. So if by chance that this video, like podcast, is released and Solskjaer's like fired, we're uploading this and he's not fired yet. So.
Yeah, I from the beginning, and he's got young coaches with him on the bench, and I think that was a mistake from the beginning. I understand. He played a transitional role that was necessary to kind of bring the club back to its roots, and did a decent job for a bit at the time. Kind of something that was needed.
Considering a transitioning role, he did a decent job.
Yeah, and it was needed, and it was the club needed to find its identity, and there needs to be somebody that knows the club's identity. But that's usually like the president of football, not necessarily the coach. So somebody that can buy the right coach, bring in the right players, bring in the right coaches. And so that you're not always bringing in different kinds of coaches. You bring in the same kind of coaches because you have the same kind of players and you want to see the same kind of football. And so it comes to a philosophy. You don't, change, from Van Gaal to Mourinho, then rebuild your squad every 3 years. So now we'll be curious, what they do. I think now, they say, oh, we're going to sing Conte.
Nah, he's not the man. He's not.
And I just are you kidding? I want a teacher. I want a modern football teacher that can teach these guys how to play.
And I think the only solution for that is, as we saw Bayern do this summer, is sign a coach. Yeah. This new philosophy of signing a coach. If you think about it, well, how much, I forgot how much they signed him for, 30 million or something like that.
They had so much they had to pay to get him.
Yeah, like a fee, like a transfer fee. And that's like the only way for United to do that. Luckily for United, they have money, they have the funds. They're Manchester United. They can afford to go out and get a coach. The question is, are they going to get the right one?
And that, I kind of feel that Nagelsmann is one choice. We've lost, the other choices. I think probably the best choice is Brendan Rodgers right now. I know he's made some statements that he's, content to stay at Leicester, but honestly, if United come calling, I think you could maybe get him if you go in hard. And
what about Erik ten Hag from Ajax?
Well, that's a good choice too. Somebody like that. One of those two, I would be happy with. But Brendan Rodgers has done it at big clubs. He's got a proactive way of playing. He's you read about training methods and creativity in training and the type of rondos that they're running, and rondos with a purpose of pressing and winning a ball in a certain period of time and with a certain number of touches. And just it seems very creative, and I feel that he could do it. He would definitely be a massive improvement. But yeah, the other guy from Ajax would
Erik ten Hag.
Ten Hag.
Yeah.
But I feel like the guy I want is at Chelsea or Liverpool.
Yeah, Tuchel and Klopp already taken.
Those are the ones I want. Yeah.
And yeah, those German coaches, man, that's the next revolution of football that is starting to happen, but quite like tactical.
Well, I wonder how long it'll go, because we do get pendulums, and so it's like.
Yeah, no, but I think people are still trying to figure out, like they've just understood the basics. I have seen teams using pressing cues and
Well, they were talking about Oxlade-Chamberlain went to Liverpool, and they started teaching him these pressing cues about, bad touch, and the whole team presses, or player receives with its back, facing the opponent's goal. The team starts to press, like just the different pressing cues. And he said he'd never heard of these things before, and so, right. And I believe that most teams have probably never trained those things and train them with intent. It's one thing to say, okay, we're going to press, but it's another thing to train it creatively and with the right kind of training sessions. And that's expertise. And so you develop that by years of trying and trying different exercises, things that are going to challenge people. So you kind of know what you're doing. So when you get rookie coaches that have not really coached before, they're just learning how to get ideas across.
Like Frank Lampard and Zidane, or
Yeah, well, Frank's, I mean, obviously he did a good job, but like to actually run exercises, he didn't do it with youth teams for like 6 years, just like breaking his head trying to think, how am I going to teach this concept to these young guys? And coming up with, one or two ways that failed and then a way that worked. And this is going to work for me. And he's, studied and he's looked and I know he's got his exercises he's seen over the course of a long career. And he's had a lot of good coaches. Let's be honest. A lot of good coaches went through Chelsea. But it still takes a while to develop your craft of coaching. There's a difference between somebody who's been doing it for, 15 years at the top and, somebody who's just learning. And, so when I talk about Brendan Rodgers, I mean, he was at Celtic, he was at Liverpool, he's doing it now at Leicester, like, multiple clubs. And then you get, Solskjaer and it's like Molde and, Swansea, whatever.
Yeah, Solskjaer doesn't quite have the same level as a lot of other coaches.
No.
It's also not at the same level. Our fullbacks.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad because you spent a lot of money.
I was never convinced with Wan-Bissaka. Never.
Yeah.
He was the wrong signing. I get it, you want defensive solidity, but on the ball, he's a street footballer, nothing more.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to think you can do better. You have to think you can do better. Somebody that that can offer some threat, especially with the way football's played right now. And so that's a position that could easily be strengthened. We need another center back for sure. And still need to clean some house. They talk about the names that are on the bench. And I'm just like, that's like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I didn't know that Jones was still on the team.
Matic, like, Jones
is
like
still on the team.
No, like these guys, Juan Mata was a genius, but he's just, it's time. And so someone else needs to take that spot. And Jones the same way. You got to sort it out. If he's not going to play, you don't trust him, like move him on and bring back Wanzebe.
Yeah, I agree. It's a sticky situation. I would definitely, assuming that Solskjaer leaves, put a bigger role on Van de Beek. It's kind of sad how much game time he's been getting.
Yeah, so I don't understand why you bought him if you didn't want him. And what's
I don't understand. It's like he doesn't want to play him with Fernandes, and to me that doesn't make any sense.
So
first of all, Fernandes
where do you
is
play
playing,
them?
Fernandes is playing striker at the moment.
Yeah,
that needs to change.
Right.
Assuming we're gonna be a normal team and we're gonna play with three midfielders.
Okay, can you play them in the midfield?
You can play Fernandes and Van de Beek.
And then who's gonna be a defensive mid?
If you can trust McTominay to stay put.
Yeah, I determined today. I was looking at lists of names and defensive midfielders around the world, but I think there's only one person that will fill the role.
Let me guess, Ndidi.
Well, I was thinking Declan Rice.
Rice, yeah.
That's
Ndidi,
your guy.
Ndidi, Rice, those are two ballers.
Yeah.
Rice is just, another monster.
Yeah, I know they seem similar to McTominay, but not.
They have more game.
Yeah. Like, you think McTominay...
McTominay only made it out of the youth team because he grew to 6'4". Right. They were going to release him.
Yeah. Rice can block that hole. And Ndidi, a specialist that can really close that gap.
And then you can afford to have Pogba and Fernandes
then you can have, but you still need to
But I'm not convinced that Pogba's the guy. To me, Van de Beek needs to have a bigger role on the team.
It's the same problem you had back in the day when Moyes came and you signed all the slow players. You bought Fellaini and you had Rooney, and you had all these like slow players on the field.
Fletcher.
And it was just like the team's too slow. Your team speed is slow, and so now now you got all these flair players, and it's like the balance is wrong, and so Pogba's time. Pogba's a genius with some of the balls he plays.
That's no question.
There's no question. He can play balls, and he can do some things and hit some passes that no one else can. So if you build your team around that, and if, he can do some things for you. I'm not sure. I think the balance is just a very big problem in midfield. What do you do with Pogba in midfield in this day and age? It's a kind of tricky question.
Yeah, and the only solution we've ever come up with is to cover him, which...
Right, you're asking someone else to do his work, so someone else has to work for him. So then if that was going to be the case, but if that was the case, you wouldn't have Fernandes.
What if you played Pogba false 9?
But his passing range is
better
from
you're right.
I know
It's just an idea.
But they always complain about his production goes down when he's deeper, but and he loses the ball. Yeah. When he loses the ball, he's closer to your goal. See, it's a problem. But I do see, they talk about him kind of playing in a more advanced midfield role. But I would think that you would need your other two central midfielders to be workers. And so, Fernandes, it's the wrong kind of type of guy. Because there are creative players that work and are a little bit disciplined.
So what's your... I'll tell you mine after you answer. But what's your 11 right now? Your starting lineup with the team we have.
With the current
including
team?
with the loan players. The players out on loan.
With the loan players?
The current team with the players out on loan.
I think I put...
Okay, let's start from the goalkeeper spot. Who would you put?
Well, I think De Gea has been playing actually pretty good this year.
Yeah.
But, no, I think he's been playing well. I would probably pair Varane with Tuanzebe.
Yeah.
And I know we've been arguing about Shaw a little bit, but I would trust that Shaw can get back to his...
Yeah. If he can get back to the confidence he had during the Euros, there's no question he should start. But right now, you can tell he doesn't have that confidence. He kept getting sucked in on the side, and they would play it to the wings, and they would play a ball in behind.
I don't get any signings. I don't have to play.
No signings. So who's your right back? You're gonna put Dalot, Laird.
Man, that's hard. Just such a weak spot.
Williams.
I kind of liked him.
Yeah,
he provides some thrust, and he's a tough guy, and he's got some attitude.
United attitude, yeah.
Can Tejas, can he play on the opposite side? Because he's a good player. It seems a waste to have him.
If you had a fullback coming in,
he sits kind of like Walker, just sits in the.
You have him sit in the half space.
Because you have Sancho out wide.
Interesting. That could work.
Because he's a good player.
Who's your midfield?
Well, I think I would work on McTominay. With what I have, it would be McTominay, and you got Carrick there. He needs positional training, and I'm assuming they're doing it. He's played in the back for his country. He'd need to learn to play as a single defensive midfielder that can cut off passes into the forward and really be helping out the center backs. Mm-hmm. And so I think I would do that, and I think I would play with the current team. I think I would play Fernandes and Pogba if they would follow instructions.
We'll assume they will, yeah.
And play deeper, start their movements from deeper. Pogba, played maybe deeper even than Fernandes, but as a 3, I'm not really a
Like
fan.
a flat three.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
you know,
interesting.
Pogba can kind of play on the left, Fernandez on the right. Fernandez tends to run around too much, for my liking, and he tires himself out. Like, I remember Croatia with Rakitic and Modric, one would, fade to one side of the field. So when the play, went on that side of the field, he'd kind of, go through Modric. And then when the ball switched over, Rakitic would take over, would build play on the other side. And then they had a pivot between them. And so it's, a little bit, you don't have to work so hard. I think that's the selling point. It's like you work a little smarter.
Yeah, offensively.
You work smarter.
So who's your front three?
Cavani, Sancho, and Rashford.
Yeah. My lineup's not too different. Maybe a little one wild card or two. I would probably start Henderson in goal instead of De Gea. I think he's more trustworthy. I think De Gea has moments in his season where he's not concentrated.
Could be. In the last year, I would have said for sure Henderson.
Yeah. Center backs, I would agree with you. Varane and Tuanzebe. Those are, Maguire can. I mean, he's a good character to have around, but like, if you're gonna be a team that keeps possession and presses high, you don't want a slow center back. So that didn't really make sense to me. Left back, I know we've been arguing days. The modern game with fullbacks that can just pull out balls out of nowhere. For example, Trent, Alexander-Arnold. Right back, this is another wild card. I'd probably go Ethan Laird, who's, I believe, out on loan. He looks like a bright young talent. He's versatile. He's just an attacking right back. My midfield three, I think I would go with a flat midfield three with Fernandez on the left, Van de Beek in the middle, and Mejbri on the right.
Yeah, he's a good young player.
That kid
Yeah, that was pretty.
is a magician.
I can't wait to see him a little bit more.
You thought magicians were fake, huh?
So you would try Van der Beek as like a sitting.
Not sitting. He'd just be in the middle. He'd be kind of the one. He'd play like kind of a Busquets role.
I think he could play it, but from what I've seen, he can't.
In what way?
I've seen him kind of like in and around the box, like kind of like defensively, kind of like his efforts are not quite efforts. Like it's not quite up to my standards.
What we gave for you can have Fernandez and Pogba listen. So
Yeah,
we can
well,
get
we'll see if
Van de Beek
we'll
to
see how
listen.
long they
Yeah,
listen. If
yeah.
they don't listen, Van der Beek, I could play Van der Beek and
Yeah.
and Fernandez.
This is assuming we can't sell anyone, so
Right.
or buy anyone. And then I would imitate your front three with Rashford, Sancho, and Cavani. I think there's no question to it. It's a hardworking, versatile, scary front three.
Yeah,
Yeah, if Sancho or Rashford
and
have the
Greenwood's
ball,
available to
like,
come in and
yeah.
play, and he can rotate in and he can get minutes.
But you got to play Greenwood at striker.
Yeah,
He's not a winger.
But does he have the presence to be a real number 9?
Yeah, I don't know.
But his play has impressed me more this year than last. His link-up play has improved. So
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, thank you, Peter, for joining me today. If you guys have enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to follow us on Instagram. We'll be able to notify you when an episode comes out. If you're watching on Spotify or YouTube, you can check out our website in the link below, which contains notes from these episodes and extra articles. Hint, hint, there may be an article coming out Thursday about Patrick Bamford. Thanks for listening to Reading the Game, and have a fantabulous day.